Hello, it's Carla again. I hope you don't feel stressed because stress is a weasel word. In the language of emotions and on my website, I make the very strong suggestion that understanding which emotion is arising and how to describe it, to know what level of intensity your emotions are arising at, to be able to have names for each level of intensity of your emotions. So for instance, with sadness, you might say, I'm feeling low or a little wistful. That would be a soft level of sadness. Or if you're feeling more sad, it would be, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling blue, that sort of thing. Or an intense amount of sadness is like, I am overwhelmed. I am, completely sort of bereft. To understand different levels of your emotional activation is to become more emotionally intelligent. It's really important to know which emotion you're in and which intensity of emotion you're feeling. It's excellent. The problem, though, is if you go out and talk to people who haven't read the language of emotions and you say, well, I'm feeling some sadness right now, and suddenly everybody looks down or they get upset with you because it's like, don't say that out loud. You're not sad. No, don't cry. Everything will be fine. People get really nervous because of the way that we've been taught to sort of hate and distrust all emotions. It can be hard to bring your emotional awareness out into the regular world where people are still under the idea that it's very wrong that emotions are negative or that they're positive. That will stop people from even being able to approach the understanding of emotions. So a lot of times people will use what we call weasel words to talk about emotions. They won't say, I'm feeling some anger and shame. They'll say, I'm fine. Or they'll say, I don't know, I'm just feeling stressed. And stressed can mean anything. It can literally mean anything. It can mean sadness. It can mean grief. It can mean jealousy, envy, fear, panic. It can be stressed. It can be anger. It can be shame. It can be anything, right? So stress is a weasel word. It does not add anything to your emotional awareness. And when we're working with the language of emotions, we avoid weasel words. But not everybody does, okay? Almost everybody uses weasel words for emotions. And in the language of emotions, there's a chapter in the back called Stress and Resistance, which is where we talk about what stress is. It's an emotional reaction, right? Stress is a way to hide emotional awareness from ourselves. To say the word stress is to hide emotional awareness. Stress, that feeling of tension, that rise in adrenaline, perhaps a rise in heart rate, perhaps some confusion, perhaps some laser focus and shutting everything else out. That is fear, anxiety, some anger. It could be in that emotional area, in that emotional realm. And in the language of emotions, we learn how to work with each of those emotions. So we don't have to call it stress. We can say, whoa, I'm feeling, okay, what level of fear am I feeling? What level of anxiety am I feeling? What level of anger am I feeling? I know that anger means I need to set a boundary. Okay, so how do I do that? I know fear means that there's too much change and novelty. So I know how to work with that. I know that anxiety means that there's something that I need to do to prepare for the future. And so I know how to do that, right? So you don't just have this weaselly, amorphous word called stress that is getting in your way, right? So you don't tend to feel stressed when you learn how to work with your emotions. Instead, you listen to each of them and work with each of them in turn. That's awesome. But most people don't know how to do that. So they use the word stress all the time. Or they say they're fine, whatever, and they don't get anywhere near emotional awareness. What we found is that you can actually use weasel words to help maintain your own emotional integrity and honesty in the presence of people who don't want to hear the name of emotions, who don't want to think of emotions as anything that informs them. They just think of them as a problem, right? So we have created a weasel word list based on part of the emotional vocabulary list that's free on my site, carlamclaren.com. It's also free on a post that I have on my site that says stress is a weasel word, and maybe that's good because we can use it, right? So the emotional vocabulary list has different words. We gathered words from all over the English language to find ways to talk about emotions at many different levels of activation, right? So a weasel word could also be a soft word for an emotion. For instance, if someone is feeling obviously ashamed, and you could see it because you know what shame looks like, but you don't want to say the word shame to them because everybody hates shame, even though it's a crucial emotion. You can say, are you feeling at all hesitant? Right? That's what shame does. Shame will stop you from doing something you shouldn't be doing, right? So it'll make you hesitate. You say, are you feeling hesitant? Or are you feeling at all awkward, right? You can still talk about the actual emotion that's occurring without embarrassing or shaming someone or making them feel uncomfortable. It's awesome. So we also found that there are some words that we call wonder weasels, and they're like amazing words that can be used for anything. There's 3 of them. There's bad. I feel bad. Stressed, as you know, stress can encompass almost all emotions a person doesn't like to work with. There's also unhappy, as if happiness is what you want to feel and unhappy is anything else, right? And there are what we call lesser weasels, which are hurt and upset. I use lesser weasels more carefully because hurt and upset means that you're vulnerable. And a lot of people like to pretend that they never feel vulnerable, which of course is impossible, right? Vulnerability is also an incredibly important thing for relationship. So if someone says they never feel vulnerable, what they're saying is they're not available for relationships. Because in a healthy relationship, you're going to feel vulnerable. It's necessary, right? So you can use these 3 wonderful words, bad, stressed, and unhappy, for almost anything. So if someone's obviously showing you shame or anger or guilt or sadness or grief or any of the other emotions, right? You can say, I don't know, are you feeling stressed at all? Right? And it may help them say, I don't know about stress. Do you know what I am feeling? I'm feeling that what she said to me was wrong. And this is what I'm dealing with right now. In a way, you can use weasel words to help other people sort of home in on the actual emotion they're feeling. So weasel words can be magical, and it's almost as if we're performing a kind of emotional aikido, right? So we're utilizing the weaseliness of these words, and weasels are wonderful animals, right? To kind of get around the fact that almost all of us grew up with no emotional vocabulary, no understanding of what emotions do or what they are or what their purpose is, and no understanding of how to work with emotions as parts of our basic intelligence, right? So weasel words are a gift. They can hide emotional information from people, but we can also use them to at least identify that there is an emotion in the room. Weasel words are wonderful. I give them to you now freely, bad, stressed, unhappy, hurt, and upset, and I say go forth and weasel your way into the world and bring more emotional awareness and more empathy into a world that is really needing it right now. Thanks so much. I'll see you soon.